Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. And if you've ever seen that movie Moneyball, whenever I'm around this guy, I'm reminded by that movie because he's the cool Brad Pitt guy. And I'm the fat Jonas Hill guy. Except he's as smart as Jonas Hill is in that movie. And I'm as dumb as Brad Pitt is in his worst moments in that movie. But anyway, we have with us today the president of our Salisbury City Council, Jake Day. Jake, welcome to One on One.
Greg, you cracked me up.
What's it like to be so good looking and so smart?
I don't consider myself either of those things, so I don't know.
Well, you have taken this city by storm. I mean, I'm somebody who sat here and watched things not work very well for a long time. And suddenly they do. Now, either I've had a stroke and I don't understand what's really going on, or you have done something to change the way things work around here. Talk about that for me.
Could be a little of column A, a little of column B. I think one of the reasons I got into elected office, one of the reasons I was interested in it was because I saw things not working. People were fighting, people couldn't get along, and government couldn't get out of its own way. There were a lot of substantive things that I wanted to work on, but first and foremost was making government function. So at the city level, it has been my objective to do just that. And part of that, my first responsibility was to do that at the council level, to make things work at the council level. So from day one, working with Ms. Cohen, Mr. Spies, Ms. Mitchell, and Ms. Shields, my objective was to work together as a team, to come together as a team, and to bring the mayor into that, and for the six of us as elected representatives of the people of Salisbury to focus on those substantive things that I was talking about and to get out of our own way.
Now, the mayor was here a couple weeks ago, and we talked about a lot of the big issues that people were always hesitant to try to address them because it was just too hard.
Right.
Like you look at the big stuff, we can't do that, it's too hard.
Right.
Nothing's too hard for you.
Well, no, we've got to focus on the big stuff. But if you can walk into a council meeting and anticipate the outcome every single time and know what the vote is going to be every single time with absolute certainty, there's a problem. And government's not functioning. And people aren't doing their jobs. People probably aren't doing their homework. They probably aren't talking to the community because I believe America can't be divided neatly into two categories on anything.
Right.
And when a community is divided neatly into two categories on every single item, whether it's towing or the sale of a firehouse or the appointment of a fire chief, something's wrong. And people are getting into personality politics.
The towing ordinance was like 8 months of back and forth on a towing ordinance.
Look, and that was before my time, but I've actually received some phone calls from some towing companies lately, and they want to start talking about it again. But, I think anything solvable, any problem with the code and the application of the law and working out problems between two parties. We've got an interesting one coming up about the definition of the work day or the work week, and really the adjacency between development and construction, which is a good thing for our community, and the and neighborhoods and the peace and quiet that they expect early on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Look, nobody's wrong, and it's not a right and wrong. It's not a black and white. We can find compromise. You just have to listen to people and help them achieve what is most important to them in that moment.
Right. And downtown's been full of false starts, supposedly. People have asked me for years, what do you think should be happening downtown? I always say, just ask Palmer Gillis and do whatever Palmer wants to do, because Palmer had the most vision of anyone that I knew about downtown. But that's changed. There's lots of people with lots of visions about downtown. I don't know that they're all competing visions, but I know there's a downtown redevelopment plan going on right now, a revitalization plan, the Main Street program. Great meeting this week. You had a great work session where you went through some of the plan. Tell me more about that. I mean, you're like in the minutia enough that there was one discussion about a public theater area around the government office building and whether to plant a tree in a certain location. So there's that kind of minutia, but at the same time, when I look at that, the big picture is so impressive to me that I actually start to believe in a positive future.
Good. Good. That's what we need. We need people to believe in our community. You know, we've got a saying. There's a saying in a program in the military saying, "Hunt the good stuff." You focus on the good things. Build on those things. Make those your strengths. So that's our objective right now. But let me talk about the kind of big picture stuff, and then we'll zoom into the minutia. We'll talk about the placement of a tree, or the type of paver we select, or the bench design we select. We can get into all of that. So big picture. For the last 50 years, American cities, Salisbury included, have been trying to figure out how in the world do we revitalize our core? How in the world do we revitalize our city center? Salisbury is no different from those other communities. Where we've departed at times is Salisbury's continued to make decisions about in favor of sprawl development, which ultimately costs every taxpayer more. It makes our tax bills higher long term. It costs us more in terms of maintenance. It spreads out economic impact. It spreads out our growth. The key to economic growth and economic development is density of economic activity. That means shops and people close together and a lot of stuff happening all the time. Right. And some of that's cultural, like Third Friday and First Saturday, and we can talk about those too. But some of that's cultural because culture and the arts, as was reminded to us by about 25 people on Monday night, culture and the arts have a greater economic multiplier than most other things. So we can't ignore that. But for about 50 years, we've been trying to figure this out. If you look at the planning documents that Salisbury and Wicomico County adopted in the 1960s, in most of them...
RUDAD. I used to write about the RUDAD study.
RUDAD in 1980s.
Yeah.
Those documents, they said very much the same things we're saying today. Hey. Right? And the funniest thing that I see is there's this, and Jack Lennox, our planning director, our joint city-county planning director, and by the way, that's a good example of collaboration, right? Yeah. We should see more of those. He's got a document in his office, and I swear it's about this big, and it's hardbound. It's the way we used to do things,
right?
Handmade planning document for downtown. And in it, it recommends using federal urban redevelopment dollars to acquire 2 blocks. And one block is what we currently know as Lot 1, the library parking lot, and the other block is the parking garage.
Right.
And it said, let's buy all those buildings, tear them down, create a giant parking garage on the one block. Well, hey, we did it. And the other, let's for 2 years create a blank slate of parking, and then let's redevelop it into dense mixed-use development.
Right.
Well, we never did that.
The second part never happened.
We made the parking lot, the temporary parking lot, only our 2 years turned into 45.
Right.
So we've made a mistake there as a community, and we've got to come back from that. If you look at the heart of a community, the center of a community, and you see a parking lot, that tells you what the most important asset to that community is. What do we care most about? A parking lot?
Right.
No, come on. What do we really care about? Park, development, community, library, entrepreneurial center. Those are the things that we should care most about, and that should be at the heart of our community.
Right.
So I see those things as things we should continue to invest in, and we are. As you know, the city is putting those developments or those lots out for development. That process is continuing. Lot 10, which is at the intersection of Route 13 and Route 50, is going out. And all of those things are happening. And we have to do those because those are the long-term things, the strategic planning sort of thinking. And we've got to take those big swings. But as Palmer has often said, to use a quote from him, you've got to also focus on the intermediate stuff.
Right.
You've got to focus on the tactical decisions and the operational level of work. You've got to turn the empty buildings into full buildings.
Right.
You've got to turn the empty storefronts into restaurants and shops. And we're doing that with the Brick Room and Dead Stock and Angelo's Gifts. I mean, these things are happening.
Right.
And then you've also got to focus on the ephemeral things. You've got to make the constant daily activity of the arts scenes and the cultural events a part of life in downtown. You've got to operate on all 3 scales. And I think in the past what leaders have done is they've picked one.
Right.
They've said, sure, let's focus on the arts.
Right.
And they've ignored everything else. Or they've said, let's go for broke and swing for the fences.
Right.
And let's try to do a massive development and let's not do anything else.
Yeah.
But we've got to operate on all 3 scales.
Yeah, I was always struck by, I guess they were competing with the mall, so they needed a lot of parking downtown at that point. But one of the things that turned the tide for me was the library discussion, whether to build a new library out on the east side of town. And I actually looked at it and I was in favor of it because I thought downtown didn't have the future that certainly you thought it had. But I've never been more wrong about anything. That library has to be downtown. Now I get it.
It's our anchor store. As,
Yeah.
as Andrea Bursler, our great library director, says, it's our anchor store. It's, for lack of a better term, it's the Macy's of downtown.
Right.
You have to have that, and I think it's an important part of downtown. And libraries are changing, right? You look at this library, and it is no longer an old armory building filled with books.
Right.
It's partly that.
Right.
it's without a doubt partly that, but it's also a education center, an entrepreneurial center,
And a community center.
and a community center.
And the new entrepreneurial center is excellent there. Yeah, it's really cool.
Launch SBY
Yeah.
in the ground floor there, the basement, which is a fantastic initiative. The county has put money into that, which I think is a wonderful decision. I
Right.
hope that continues. And I think that you've got a real good example there of the type of activity that is focused on the future of Salisbury's economy and
Right.
not the past. And I think we've seen a couple indicators in the last few weeks and months of what the past economy looks
Right.
like, and not just in Salisbury, but in America, and where we're headed to the future economy. I believe Launch SBY is a great indicator of where we're headed. And, the consumer city, everything around that.
Right.
And those two things being tied together is an indicator of the future. And I also think that that's not a permanent location
Right.
for either the library or the entrepreneurial center. They can both be elsewhere downtown eventually.
Right.
A library basement is not the most inspirational place to create your business, but it is a space and it is working for now.
Right. Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, my office is near there, and I've gone down there a couple times just to kind of network and run into people and just to sort of see what's going on. So there is that exchange of humanity, which
Right.
is a really good thing. What's coming up big right now for the council? There's a lot of issues out there. There's a tax differential. Mayor fired another salvo the county this week. I think the county's probably pretty busy with some stuff.
I think they are.
but,
I think they are.
But I understand, day 49 of no response on tax differential. What are the issues that are driving you in the council right now?
Sure. So the reason that I believe the administration put that out was because we have a state bill. I say we. Carol Krim of Frederick, new delegate, has put out a bill that would require that all counties that don't currently have tax differential.
I missed that.
It's there.
Okay.
It's there. She dropped the bill. There's a hearing on March 4th, I believe.
Right. But I don't think he's
in
made the
Annapolis.
connection in the thing that I read, but maybe.
Maybe he didn't
Yeah.
make the connection,
Right.
but
Okay, that helps a lot. now.
my guess is that that's
Yeah.
why it was done when it was done. To say, hey, we're trying to solve this in a way that helps you, the county,
Right.
achieve the political promises that have been made, that you've
Right.
made. Also helps county citizens, 33,000 county citizens.
Right.
Reduces their tax bill, doesn't give the city a penny. And that's the objective here, is not to say, the city needs more money.
Right.
We all need more money, right? But I believe my elected official colleagues in the city are not interested in revenue.
Right.
We're not trying to bring in new revenue. In fact, let's hold it where it is and let's get more efficient. But let's stop taxing our citizens twice for a service they're only receiving from the city. For
Right.
many services, they're only receiving from the city. And right now they're being taxed fully for county services that they're not receiving and that the county citizens outside of the city do receive.
And the whole fire equality with the fire system.
Sure, and fire service is a little bit different because it's like triple taxation.
Right.
You as a city resident are being taxed for the service you're receiving. Your neighbor is not being taxed for that service, and oh, by the way, you're also being taxed for their service.
Right.
So it's a real
Right.
that's a real conundrum. But I hope and I believe that through understanding, through recognizing that the county is not flush with cash, that they have burdens on them and they have challenges, that I hope and believe that we can come to a resolution in the coming years, and we need to come to a resolution
Right.
with the county on that.
More events downtown, which has always been important. But Third Friday, that was another one where I had no vision on that. I was like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And maybe it didn't for a while, but they hung in there. And then all of a sudden, one week, there's 5,000 people there.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So I go around and I give a lot of talks in urban planning and architecture and development circles and talk about, the process of change in communities. And I love using this picture from 2012 Downtown Plaza during Third Friday, a picture from 2013 and a picture from 2014. And then I love actually throwing in a New Year's Eve picture after that.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It's amazing to see the transition. And we have to be so grateful for people like Connie Stratton, Lee Whaley, and Jamie Heater in our community. And Joey Gilkerson, another one who has led on the New Year's Eve, Scott Malone on the Christmas tree lighting. I mean, these people have recognized that what they want in their community won't come unless they invest their time and
Right.
their hard work in it. And I think that harkens back to a generation in Salisbury that existed and made a lot of things happen, like the Salisbury Festival originally.
Right.
Made the Fireman's Muster happen,
Right.
back in the day.
That was a great event.
Absolutely.
It was probably a nightmare to organize, but it was fun to go to.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Chris Eccleston, who is one of those people who says, if it's going to happen in my community, I'm going to make it happen. He has been saying, he's been pulling on coattails lately.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to start that up again. And I think he's right. So how does it happen? It's elbow grease. It happens by people doing work.
Right.
But it grew to what it is by, as Jamie says, having a place and a time. We're going to be here,
Right.
and we're going to be here at this time, and we're going to do it consistently. And we're going to add events to it. We're going to add arts. We're going to add display tables. We're going to add food and drink. And drink is a little bit important. But we're going to add all of those elements to it, and music. And over time, it's going to grow into this thing where,
Right.
that's where you go on a Friday night
Right.
to be seen. When I was a kid, even, 20-some years ago, I would go to the mall on a Friday night.
Right.
And you went there not just to shop or go to the movies, but you went there to see the other people, to see your friends from school,
Right.
outside of school. Well, when I go to the mall now, it's an entirely different experience. And this isn't to knock the mall, but it's a totally different experience. And when I go to the Downtown Plaza, at any time, but especially on Third Friday,
Yeah.
it's like seeing old friends everywhere. It's become the center of community again. And we're not done.
Right.
There's so much more to do, but it's become the center of community again, which is what it always should be.
Yeah. I know Clue Caper, Great Clue Caper, the fundraiser for Village of Hope.
Yeah.
The first one, they had the after party down on the plaza. This is 5-6 years ago. And it was like the first beautiful day of spring, and it's a Sunday afternoon. And I just remember thinking, like, this place is so nice. Why don't we ever come down here and do something?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm in the generation that went, oh, it's too hard.
Well,
But you mentioned Lee Whaley and Connie Stroud, a generation ahead of mine. They have vision for this stuff. And then you have
right.
people like Jamie Heater and yourself who have the energy. They could see that kind of thing can work, and it's a great little environment down there.
well, that's a great marriage right there.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're talking about is a combination of vision and energy, and it takes that. And it's going to take the next generation, too. We have to, and in the case of the Arts and Entertainment District, they're already doing it. Also, the Art Institute and Gallery,
Right.
they're already doing it. Identifying that next generation of leadership and bringing them in and raising them up right now.
Yeah.
Because before you know it, we'll be moving on to other things.
Yeah.
We'll have, kids, and I'll have a kid, and we'll be moving on to other, focal points in life.
Right.
Lee and Connie aren't going to want to do this forever. Jamie Heater's going to get exhausted from the burdens we put on her shoulders.
Right.
And you can understand why. So we're going to have to start to lift up the next generation right now. And we might be talking 5 years, we might be talking a decade, we might be talking 2 decades, but you better be ready for when
Right.
it comes, because it's going to come faster than you think.
So first Saturday's the next thing.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Sure. First Saturday, the idea behind First Saturday is, I've looked at a lot of communities, the Greenville, South Carolinas, the Asheville, North Carolinas, the Frederick, Maryland, and I'm not ashamed of stealing the great ideas from the places that are doing really
Right.
well, and talking to them about it. I'm not hesitant to pick up the phone and, talk to the mayor of Frederick or talk to the council president in Asheville. That's I think, a reasonable expectation for leaders to
Right.
to learn from the best and repeat from the best. But you look at what many of them have done. They started with something regular like Third Friday, but they quickly expanded that into other events downtown, other regular events. And I've had people ask me, why don't we do this every Friday? Well, that's a fair question. Why don't we do this every Friday? One of the things that Frederick does, in addition to a couple regular monthly events, is they do something called Alive at 5. Every Thursday during the warm months, 5 o'clock, they gather, they have one band, they have a food cart that sells some beer. They have a local
Right.
brewery up there, Flying Dog Brewery.
Right.
They sell some beer. And we have a local brewery or two or three,
Right.
actually, here in the community. So they are starting to build that rhythm on another night of the week. And they're doing it every week, which I think is a great thing. And I think we could easily repeat that sort of idea.
Right.
So First Saturday fits into that line of thinking. First Saturday is going to be more performance art focused, more music focused, whereas Third Friday is more visual art focused. There's always music, but it's more focused on the visual arts, crafts, trades, things like that.
What time of day is it going to be?
First Saturday is going to be in the afternoon.
Okay.
It's going to be, I believe, noon to 4.
Okay.
And it's going to start in, we've got a fundraiser in March, kick off in
Right.
April, go through September. And I hope that'll be a consistent thing throughout the years to come.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's the right kind of action when we're talking about arts and culture. Build a rhythm.
Right now, a lot of focus on the county, a lot of change going on there with the new county executive, and everybody's still sizing each other up.
Sure.
A lot of talk about, you talk about the tax differential, but the interaction between the county government and the city government, it seems better to me than it's been. But now things have changed a little bit. So where do you see that going?
Well, I think
I thought it was great that Bobby Culver was at your city
Council
planning
meeting.
thing. Yeah, he came
Yeah.
to see the plan.
Yeah, it was great.
And it was great how you acknowledged him and made him part of the thing.
absolutely.
And because you guys are going to need the county for what you want to do around the courthouse, at least.
We're talking about county property.
Right,
So
exactly.
We better talk to our
You're
partners.
redeveloping their properties,
Right, we better talk. Even if we're paying for, even if I were paying to remodel your house, you'd want me to talk to you about it, right?
Right, in theory, yeah.
So I think that's a conversation that we're going to have, and that we should have immediately with County Executive Culver. So my thought is this: you can get along fine in a community and have a municipality and a county that don't interact much. But why would we want to do that?
Right.
Why in the world would we want to operate like that? We need a good relationship. Former council president Holloway, Matt Holloway, and I developed a rhythm where we would meet weekly to talk. That was a very healthy conversation. We, talked about county issues, city issues, community issues.
Right.
And yes, there are all three. There are certain things that the county has to do that don't matter
Right.
really to the folks in the city, and there are certain things that the city has to do that don't really matter to county government necessarily. Certain responsibilities that each has. But most things are community issues.
Right.
So that's why we've got to talk and why we've got to communicate. So I hope to build a rhythm in time of city leadership and county leadership meeting again. I've got a great relationship with County Council President John Cannon.
Who's a city guy, raised in the city?
Born and raised in the city,
Yeah.
from here, was in the same high school class as my dad. So I know they know each other well, and I know we all, it's small
Right, it sounds
town
great.
ultimately.
Yeah.
We all know each other. There's no reason to not talk. So we've got a good relationship. I've got a good relationship with most of the council members. I know them well. Respect all the council members. County council members, getting to know new council member Mark Kilmer. I like Mark a lot.
Yeah.
I've known John Hall my entire life. He's lived across the street from me where I grew up on Forest Lane.
Right.
So these are people, again, that are part of the community that we need to work with closely, and happy to. In terms of where we go from here, I think a regular rhythm of meeting, a regular rhythm of conversation will help us deal with those bigger issues you were talking about, tax differential, fire service agreement, in a much more calm and easy fashion, because those big issues, when you let them sit aside and you let, no offense to the media,
Sure.
but you let them be talked about out in some other place, and you don't discuss them at home, it's
Right.
like a husband and wife not communicating. Somebody's going to say something. There's going to be a rumor that you said this and I said that.
Yeah.
That we're not on the same page anymore. I believe we can get on the same page much more quickly if we sit in the room together.
Yeah, as a reporter / citizen, and you're supposed to divide yourself between that.
Good luck with
But
that.
when I call a public official and I say, what's going on with this thing? When they go, we're on top of that, I feel so much better than when I call and they go, why do you want to bring that up? Which means they're not on top of it. They don't want to deal with it.
And I don't want you to
It's
bring
too
it up
big,
to them.
right? But the ones that are on top of, that's much more refreshing. Even if they're going to bungle it or it's not going to be right, but at least they're aware of it and they're
I guess
trying
that
to.
happens.
Yeah, exactly. So that yeah.
Well, and I look at the issues that we need to address in this community. If we've got twice the team, if we've got double the team in the room, we're going to be more likely to be able to push through those issues and address them successfully. Look, our metropolitan statistical area now includes all of Sussex County,
Right.
all of Worcester County, all of Somerset County, and all of Wycomico County, and that's the Salisbury metropolitan statistical area. More people commuting into Salisbury for work now than ever before,
Right.
from those outlying areas. So our economic future is tied closely together.
Right.
Our media market is obviously much larger than that.
Right.
Our urbanized area in terms of transportation planning has now extended all the way up into Bridgeville, Delaware.
Right.
I mean, these are realities of a changing situation where our future is tied together. So if we don't communicate and if we don't work together, we're going to be in dire straits, I believe.
Talk about Salisbury Boulevard, Route 13. You're the first politician in a long time that I've heard bring that up.
Okay.
And we used to see those beautiful plans with the tree dividers down the middle, and the state was going to give some money.
Let me start by saying the reason that we're starting with downtown is because it's where you start.
Right.
If your heart and soul, if the dead center of your community is decaying, then you got rot in the core of your apple, and everything else is for naught. So there's no effort worth embracing if you haven't first started to address that. That said, the traditional boundaries of downtown, in my mind, are greater than they've ever been, and ought to be.
Right.
We ought to think about it as just the heart, not the entire system.
Right.
Our neighborhoods matter. Our neighborhood quality matters. As a lifelong resident, other than when I was away at school and living in D.C. For a bit, as a lifelong resident of Salisbury, growing up in the neighborhoods here, it matters what goes on our streets. It matters what
Right.
goes on next door. So it's the entire system. You start at the center and you work your way out. That's just logic, which I think there's been an absence of
Right.
for a long time. If you look at our draft master plan that we have been developing in partnership with the University of Maryland, thanks to a $100,000 grant from the provost of the University of Maryland, the entire Route 13 corridor is captured in that, and all the way from the college up to north of downtown. And the purpose of that was to indicate on the Route 13 corridor that the streetscape be beautified. And then there are also longer term suggestions about the densification of development along the 13 corridor. Right now it's a single-use district. It's retail. It's strip.
Right.
And if any community believes that by looking like everywhere else in America, you're going to thrive, that's a huge mistake.
Right.
You've got to be unique. You've got to attract people. You've got to create an asset out of your physical spaces. A community lives and dies by its physical spaces, its public spaces, the in-between of
Right.
the buildings. And you look at Salisbury's Route 13 corridor, Salisbury Boulevard, we have for a long time neglected it. And it has become a liability. It is not an asset.
Right.
Those individual businesses are assets, but it has become a liability. I said that in a meeting the other day, and a person who has responsibility over a great portion of that district in terms of business ownership, Sandy Fitzgerald at Pohanka,
Right.
said to me, "You're absolutely right." And she started the round of applause and said, "We're doing it. We're doing it." Sandy got excited about it, and it's going to be the Sandys of the world that are going to lead on this, not the Jake Days of the world.
Right.
You've got to have the business community on board and involved, and I believe we're at a place where we can make that happen. I met with Donnie Drewer at State Highway about 6-8 months ago, and I brought this up to him and said, what I really want to see is to see us improve. This is our local district engineer
Right.
for the city of Salisbury. He's been there for about 40 years.
I thought he retired.
No, not yet. Incredible guy. And let's
It's a Q&A. I'll do a Q&A with him. Yes.
You should.
Yeah, I
Let's
will.
hope he doesn't
Yeah.
retire soon. But Donnie, as soon as I brought this up, big grin, and he opens the drawer, literally opens the drawer at his desk, and says, I've been talking about that for
He
years.
did. He wanted that. Yeah.
And we should have done it. And we could have cleaned up this district. And then you could have expected better in terms of the private investment
Yeah.
on the other side of that property line.
Yeah.
But we didn't. And we let those things slip. But we can do it again. It's not too late. It's never too late. And in fact, State Highway, the state of Maryland, is investing in median and expansion and
Right.
improvement up to College Avenue. So we're going to see some new streetscaping
Right.
coming up to College Avenue. But it's got to go the rest of the way. 1.4 miles from Salisbury University to downtown. It's
Right.
not far.
Right.
It's really, truly walkable in terms of the distance. It's just not walkable in terms of the experience.
Right. So
No.
how can people reach you?
You can call my cell phone. You probably heard it buzzing from time to time during this interview.
Wait, I don't even have your cell phone number.
No, we got to rectify that. But you can call my cell phone at 443-235-6233.
Wow,
I've got it on me all the
cell
time.
phone. Wow.
And if I'm unable to answer, I'll call you back. That's a promise.
Okay.
And you can email me as well at jday@cityliving.salisbury.com. jday@cityliving.salisbury.com.
Wow. Jake Day, guy has changed our community. He really has changed our community. I don't know if it's him or he just tapped it or he's changed our community, and I'm honored to have him here today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you. I'm Greg Bassett, your host here on One on One here on PAC 14.